Well, Attorney General Pam Bondi is testifying in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee today, and the Epstein questions will not stop. We're going to get into who actually has the moral high ground, if anyone, when all is said and done on Capitol Hill today. Before we do, make sure to subscribe over at undercurrents.tv for the full premium experience of the show. Subscribe on YouTube. We're so close to 100,000, and wherever you get your podcasts as well. Now, without further ado, here's a flavor of Attorney General Pam Bondi responding basically by saying nothing in multiple instances of Democratic senators questioning her about the, quote, Epstein files. And we'll get into all of it. Take a look.
In February, you made a public claim that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now for review, end of quote. You then produced already public information and no client list at a major media event hosted at the White House. Attorney General Bondi, why did you publicly claim to have the Epstein client list waiting for your review and then produce nothing relevant to that claim?
Senator Durbin, if you listen to my entire clip on that, I said I had not reviewed it yet, that it was sitting on my desk along with the JFK files, the Martin Luther King files, and I said I had not yet reviewed it.
So who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you, Senator.
Eventually, you're going to have to answer for your conduct in this. And you won't do it today, but eventually you will.
Okay, so this comes just a day after Donald Trump actually did something a little bit similar in the Oval Office when asked by Caitlin Collins of CNN whether or not he had basically gotten into the Ghislaine Maxwell decision. She had been denied an opportunity at the Supreme Court. She's obviously still seeking a pardon. Here's Trump.
The Supreme Court is back and they rejected today an appeal by Ghislaine Maxwell to overturn her conviction. That means her only chance of getting out of prison is a pardon from you. Is that something you're...
Who are we talking about?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
I haven't heard the name in so long. I can say this, that I'd have to take a look at it. I would have to take a look. Did they reject that?
She wanted to appeal her conviction.
And what happened?
They said that they were not going to hear her appeal.
I see. Well, I'll take a look at it. I will speak to the DOJ. I wouldn't consider it or not consider it. I don't know anything about it. So, but I will speak to the DOJ.
Why would she be a candidate for clemency, sir?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to speak to the DOJ. I'll look at it. I have a lot of people who have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
But she was convicted of child sex trafficking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at it. I'd have to ask DOJ. I didn't know they rejected it. I didn't know she was even asking for it, frankly.
Okay. But there was a more instructive exchange throughout all of Pam Bondi's testimony, and I think in recent days as well, to this question of who really has the moral high ground, if anyone, because the answer is, of course, that nobody has the moral high ground. Let's take a look at this exchange between Dick Durbin, Democrat senator from Illinois, and Marsha Blackburn, Republican senator from Tennessee.
And, Senator Durbin, I find it very interesting that you refused repeated Republican requests to release the Epstein flight logs in 2023 and 2024. You fought that. Did you take money from Reid Hoffman, campaign donations, who was a huge Epstein friend? Why did you fight for years? Why did you fight to not disclose the flight logs, Senator Durbin?
I can tell you I did not refuse. One of the senators here wished to produce those logs, and I asked her to put it in writing, and she never did.
Yeah, I think Senator Blackburn would quarrel with you on that.
Well, I will quarrel with you as to Reid, somebody that you mentioned I never heard of.
Reid Hoffman.
Mr. Chairman, since Senator Durbin referred to me, I would really appreciate the opportunity to correct the record.
Proceed.
Because Senator Durbin knows I repeatedly asked for those flight logs. I brought up the subpoena. You even shut down the committee because you didn't want that, and I submitted that in writing, and you continue to misrepresent that, and I am not going to let that record stand.
So that all happened during the Bondi hearing, where I actually really think this exchange between Durbin and Blackburn is one of the most interesting, actually it's probably the most telling moment of this entire conversation with Bondi. And Bondi, by the way, of course, was also answering questions about those strikes on boats in the Caribbean. She was also answering questions about troops in cities. So she had a lot to talk about. And the focus on Epstein right now, there can be no question, is absolutely, as Blackburn's response highlights, opportunistic from Democrats. Just as it was for some Republicans, opportunistic when Democrats were in power and they were, before Donald Trump had returned to the White House, able to paint this as something that Democrats were covering up. The truth is that both Republicans and Democrats have covered this up for years, are covering it up right now, and will continue to cover it up for years to come. We've talked about it here on this show. Probably what you can expect to see is something similar in the long term to the Kennedy assassination files, both JFK and RFK, or MLK assassination files, which is there's information that is just given out in drips and drabs through public records requests, FOIAs, leaks to the media, and maybe someday there's a big document dump in decades after a lot of people who may be implicated are no longer with us, their power is no longer threatened, where we piece together a fuller picture of what actually went on behind the scenes. But the odds of us getting anywhere near some type of smoking gun that explodes it all into public view within days, weeks, months is very low, precisely because there's so much on the line for, again, both parties here. Because Marsha Blackburn was all over this story. She has been all over this story for years. What she's saying with Dick Durbin is getting at exactly what happened with Democrats when they were trying to cover up the story. When Democrats were playing around with the Epstein cover-up, there were real attempts by Republicans to get more information out of them. Now, the reason Pam Bondi is getting so many Epstein questions right now in October of 2025, everyone knows it. It's because this administration saw that there was a lot of political fodder when it came to Democrats implicated in Epstein. And also, here's why Republicans have been more interested in it than Democrats, I would say, in like the last 10 years or so, is actually because Republicans, the Republican kind of, let's say professional conservative apparatus, so conservative media, conservative movement groups, detest the Republican establishment in a way that Democrats haven't reckoned with. Their own voters detest the Democratic establishment. People like Dick Durbin. And so you heard a lot more conversation in MAGA circles because MAGA circles have always been opposed to the Republican establishment. So they didn't care. In fact, all the better if there were Republican attorneys generals who were implicated. People like Alex Acosta, who was nominated to be Donald Trump's labor secretary, and is obviously implicated in the sweetheart deal that Jeffrey Epstein got down in Florida in the aughts. Conservatives were like, yep, get rid of this guy. This guy is suspicious. And it's the same thing over and over again with anybody who's like on the right, roughly. Conservative base doesn't care. And for a long time, the sort of, let's say, professional left apparatus didn't realize that their own audience, whether it's voters, consumers of their media, was just as interested in finding out whether Bill Clinton or high-profile Democratic donors, Epstein himself, by the way, were implicated for political reasons in this. And average Americans actually do care. I mean, everybody knows that average Americans care about this. It's a question of where their priorities are. When it comes to Pam Bondi, what are the average Americans' priorities about the Department of Justice? What are the average Americans' priorities when it comes to questioning the Trump administration, period? Is Epstein really high up on the list? It's probably not the top thing for most Americans, but that also doesn't mean that they don't care. And so Democrats have realized this and are using it. And I think to some extent, good, right? Good. Let everybody question everybody as tough as they possibly can. But what a likely outcome is, or what we may see happen eventually, is that everybody just gets enough that is damaging to their political opponents and while protecting themselves to the extent that it's possible. And again, we just have decades before we'll learn the actual real story, if we ever do, about what was happening behind the scenes with Jeffrey Epstein. Was he part of some great conspiracy? Who knew? Who was on the island? All of these questions. There are plenty of theories. There's plenty of evidence in different directions. But to actually know definitively, conclusively, the political class just has way too much on the line to give a good answer to the question on. And Pam Bondi is Exhibit A. Again, this is an administration who understood that its own voters and those kind of, what's the right word? There's all kinds of like pejoratives that are tossed around about the podcast bros and the dude demographic, but people who are listening to Joe Rogan, Andrew Schultz, Lex Friedman, who going into the election saw maybe some hope in Donald Trump because people like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Trump himself were talking a big game about transparency, about finally getting to the bottom of the quote deep state, exposing the deep state, challenging the deep state, dismantling the deep state. And when Pam Bondi said she had Epstein files on her desk, she's now given many explanations for what that means, and she's gotten plenty of questions about it. Though she's never answered them sufficiently for people who follow this stuff very closely. When Pam Bondi said that, when they did the binders, the binder photo op, which was, according to reporting, orchestrated by Bondi World, when they did that, they came into office. They set expectations very high. They staked some of their credibility on getting to the bottom of this. And then, very suddenly, they said, well, first of all, with the binders, they made a big theatrical show of releasing information that had mostly already been released. And then a couple of months later said basically, case closed. We are not probing this further, and we're not going to, we don't have any information, any more additional information. They released some documents, but they said, we don't have anything else. We have no evidence of anything else. We're closing this investigation, essentially. And then it was, Congress is now investigating it and pushing for documents, and good on Republican James Comer, who is one of those people, I think, in MAGA world who's genuinely concerned about answers to these questions, Marsha Blackburn being another one of them. It's not to say there aren't political benefits that come with asking these questions, of course, but there are also political risks for the right now, too, in that Donald Trump could be continually exposed or implicated the more questions that are asked. Documents that Comer's released, for example, have gone in that direction, but some people on the right understand, even politically, the cost-benefit analysis here, because there is probably no smoking gun document. It's more a question of like what people who know things actually know. We can follow the document trail, but what they would tell us if they were being honest, and what what Ghislaine Maxwell would tell us if she was being honest and not desperately looking for a pardon from Donald Trump from her 20-year sentence. So I think the Comers of the world understand, even if they are genuinely concerned with getting answers, that the political benefits for the right are to continue pursuing this investigation, because MAGA world staked so much on getting to the bottom of it that at least in some way there has to be the appearance of inquiry, ongoing inquiry into all of this. Democrats now believe they can use this to tie Donald Trump politically to the oligarchy, which is, again, it's opportunistic, just as opportunistic as Pam Bondi saying she was definitely getting answers to all of this. She was releasing files, she was bringing transparency forward, and then essentially closing the case after a couple of months and refusing to answer questions in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee that should be easy to answer. She should be able to say yes or no, explain some of these questions. But that's the reason, obviously, Trump world is in much more... let's just say this is the reason it's obvious that Trump world is facing tough questions from Democrats right now, is that so much of the Trump re-election was staked not just on Epstein, but on draining the swamp. And the Epstein case is seen as perhaps one of the, and people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi and Donald Trump sort of talked about the Epstein case in the context of this grand project of dismantling the deep state. It is seen as so representative and illustrative of the problems that Donald Trump staked a lot of his campaign and has staked a lot of his political credibility, and many of the people around him have staked a lot of their credibility on tackling. So, of course, to some extent, I mean, I have no idea what role Donald Trump actually played in the clumsy DOJ handling of this case, just start to finish. Like, again, on a political level, the incompetence has been staggering. Isn't that a Veep quote? The incompetence has been staggering from the DOJ. Just that, like, let's say you wanted to orchestrate a cover-up. They have done it in the worst possible way and in so many unforced errors, starting with the binders, but then going on into right now when Pam Bondi is trying to hit back at some of these Democratic senators. But unlike Marsha Blackburn, doesn't really have a leg to stand on. So really tough for Trump world. They know that. They're going to continue dealing with it. We're probably not going to continue getting many answers in the near future. But again, on the right, so much was staked on dismantling the quote deep state, dismantling the elites, dismantling the sort of oligarchy. So yes, it's a bit laughable for Bondi to be engaged in a cover-up, and for people like Sheldon Whitehouse and Dick Durbin to suddenly be dining out on taking tough questions to Pam Bondi on Jeffrey Epstein. Absolutely, and that's just really sad, because there's certainly real corruption at the heart of this. There's real suffering at the heart of this. And there's a real callousness and sickness to the political class that we can, obviously, we are entitled to know more about. And these are lessons that could be beneficial to the American people when they go about their daily lives, when they vote, when they think about who they prefer to be in office. So it's always sad to watch this come back up. It always has been. I think everybody's always felt that way. But the correct sentiment in this case should be pessimism, because nobody has the moral high ground. Basically, nobody has the moral high ground. There are some people who genuinely do want answers, have been consistent on getting answers, but the politics basically make it impossible for any lawmakers or people in positions of power, the media, to be consistent on this. And it's always just a good reminder of how sad that is a statement on our system right now. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe over at undercurrents.tv for the full premium experience of the show, where you get unedited versions of our interviews with amazing thinkers, lawmakers. Head on over there. You get some great stuff from Unheard as well. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and of course over on YouTube as well. We'll see you back here with more soon.